quick about it. Sorry.
I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just where I'm supposed to be. I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just where I'm supposed to be. I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just where I'm supposed to be. I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just where I'm supposed to be. Oh, my soul is welcome here. Oh, my soul is welcome here. I am getting the message loud and clear. My soul is welcome here. I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just what I'm supposed to be. I'm in the right place at the right time. I am just what I'm supposed to be. Oh, my soul is welcome here. Oh, my soul is welcome here. I am getting the message loud and clear. My soul is welcome here. Oh, my soul is welcome here. Oh, my soul is welcome here. I am getting the message loud and clear. My soul is welcome here. I am getting the message loud and clear. My soul is welcome here. 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 I am getting the message loud and clear. My soul is welcome here.
So good morning. And welcome to our Unity Community Hybrid Sunday service. As we know and affirm that love knows no boundaries, no distances, so wherever we are physically, here in person or here through technology, we are one in spirit. And so we breathe together into this now present moment, and we celebrate together as we co-create this beloved community of revolutionary love. I'm Reverend Vicki Elder, and I'm here with Reverend Michelle Vargas. Gotta keep getting that name right, Michelle Vargas, and our Essential Sunday Service team. Our music director, Denise Headland, with John Dundon on drums. We've got a couple of Johns, John Talon on sound, and our board co-president, Robin Falkenberg, doing platform, and Jan Lindenthal Cox doing the live stream. Nicole Sanks is creating a loving space for our children's church downstairs, and Larry Sanks is here helping with logistics, including ushering. So we thank all of you who are here in person for agreeing to and abiding by our level orange COVID protocols. We're grateful that our county's adjusted case rate last week was 2.2 per 100,000, the lowest in almost a year. When we hit 2.0 for 2 weeks, we will be in the yellow tier, which is the lowest tier we can go to. So we all continue to hold the vision of the day when we can all be here together, able to gather and hug and laugh and sing and shout for joy without masks. Amen.
Amen.
Again, so it's amen. So we begin this morning by affirming our Unity of Monterey Bay sacred purpose as an inclusive spiritual community committed to co-creating an environmentally sustainable, spiritually fulfilling, socially just, and compassionate human presence on this planet. We honor the God of each of our understanding and affirm the innate good and divine essence within each and every individual. Would you please join me in our statement of faith? There is only one presence and one power in the universe, God the good, expressing as infinite God beyond us, intimate God beside us, inner God being us, divine love in action. And so it is. This morning I share a prayer from Silent Unity of Unity World Headquarters for our Unity of Monterey Bay beloved community and Unity ministries around the world. Dear friends in Unity, your ministry is a powerful force for good. As you practice and live spiritual principles, you each more fully express your truth. We are honored to pray with you and your Unity ministries around the world as you create positive environments in your local communities. The truth of your being is that you are the very essence of love, wholeness, wisdom, and joy. Living from this awareness, you build meaningful relationships, enhance your physical and emotional well-being, and utilize your talents and abilities to the fullest. We unite in this truth with you, affirming unlimited good for you and the people you hold close in your hearts. By expressing your divine essence, you transform your lives and uplift everyone around you. We hope you feel empowered by this realization, knowing that through the power of your thoughts and words, you are building a better world. One in prayer, Silent Unity. So I just invite all of you to take that into your heart as we come together in this Unity of Monterey Bay community and build the beloved community here within and also out into our community and county and state and world. And so again, we say amen, and amen. Please now join in our spring affirmation, softly to yourself if you're here in person. I release what no longer serves me.
I release what no longer serves me.
To make space for new opportunities and growth.
To make space for new opportunities and growth.
And so it is. A reminder to check the weekly eBlast shout-out to learn of our weekly classes as well as updates on special events. The Wednesday night gathering group is on a hiatus for the next 3 weeks, but we will begin again on the 26th of May. And as noted in this week's eBlast, we're inviting folks as they feel ready to participate in our summer-fall dinner fling fundraiser. We always capitalize the fun part of it, where individuals host dinner gatherings or other kinds of gatherings where the theme, size, cuisine, etc. is determined by the host, and they host those who buy tickets here at Unity, so all the proceeds go to Unity. This summer, to continue with health safety, we're suggesting outdoor patio events or other kinds of outdoor events so people feel safe and like we can really connect. But most importantly, that's what it's about, looking for opportunities where we can connect with one another more than on a screen, where we can begin to be in person with one another. So if you have ideas about hosting one of those, you can contact me or Michelle, and we will get a schedule set up and start letting people know what events are available for them to buy tickets for. And again, also be sure to mark your calendars for our Roaring 20s annual banquet and auction on September 17th at Bayonet Black Horse. We are collecting items for the auction, and so we just invite you to be thinking about that, and we're taking them in here, and Susan is organizing all of them in the storage room downstairs. So get your dancing shoes ready, and we're looking for volunteers to help plan and facilitate the logistics, including decorations and setting up the auction and such, but I can't wait. It's going to be fun. I'm going to have to find a flapper dress and beads and all of it. It'll be headband, you can just see. Somebody asked me if they could come as James Cagney, and I said, absolutely. It'll be fun. So it's the first Sunday of May, and so we're celebrating May birthdays, which includes my grandson, Mateo, who's turning 13. 13. That cannot be possible. My first grandson, all of you remember me going through that whole process. So, but come on down. Also, my son Kyle is on the 19th. So we have a lot of May
John?
birthdays. Victoria's and right. So if you're out there and this is your May birthday, just take this in.
And John's is the 25th. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, you're wonderful. Happy birthday to you. God is blessing you now. God is blessing you now. God is blessing you, you're wonderful. God is blessing you now. Woohoo!
When is your actual birthday, John?
The 25th.
The 25th.
The
Cool.
25th.
All right. Now we're going to bless our kids. So if you guys would like to come up here,
Just in time, you guys.
just in time.
Come on.
You guys are getting so big. I don't believe how much you've grown in the last year. So as we do every week now, we take time to bless our children, and we're blessed that we actually have some kids here in person. We're excited about that. We bless all the teachers who are everybody's going back. They're all learning how to come back together again and do school with masks and distancing and such. We especially give thanks for the resilience and creativity and enthusiasm and contagious joys that children embody and are there freely that we can absorb that into our own lives. So we join in our heartfelt blessing. And again, I'm going to try and do these sign language. So we love you. We bless you. We appreciate you. Just the way you are. This bright light of mine,
I'm gonna let it shine. This bright light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This bright light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
And now we again center ourselves and deepen into this blissful interconnection with Spirit. Taking a deep breath in and letting it out with an audible sigh, we allow all distractions to gently fade away as we invite the chime to call us into the sacred space within. We ring the chime 4 times to call in the 4 directions and remind us of our interconnection with all of creation and with the sacred circle of life. As we feel it resonate through our very beings, we follow its call into this now present moment within. Continuing to focus on our breath, with each inhale, we open our hearts and minds. We envision our breath reaching every cell of our being. And with each exhale, we see all barriers and obstacles dissolving into this divine flow. Again, as we inhale, we expand the spaciousness within us. We move beyond the limitations and boundaries of our bodies. And as we exhale, we ground ourselves deep within Mother Earth and into our oneness with the universe. Finally, we breathe our awareness into the highest expression of love, light, joy, and peace we can imagine as we experience a transforming wave of gratitude. And with a fullness of heart, we say yes to it all, embracing, claiming, and knowing the divine Christ Spirit expressing in, through, and as us. And with a final exhale, we say, thank you, God. Now fully centered and transformed by the power of Spirit, we enter into our lesson and meditation time with today's daily word.
We read from today's daily word, shared with permission of Unity, publisher of Daily Word, that can also be found at dailyword.com. And the word is grace. I invite you to allow my words to be your words. The grace of God is alive in me. I don't need to do anything to earn or deserve the grace of God because it is always present, mine to claim in any situation. Grace dawns in my awareness as soon as I move beyond the limits of my human understanding. I let go and let the peace, love, wisdom, and strength of God fill me, lift me, and guide me. In both the challenging and the ordinary moments of life, the grace I give and the grace I receive keep the awareness of God in my heart. During a tough conversation, a thought comes to mind that helps reestablish harmony. As I mull an important decision, a fresh insight clarifies my thinking. Feeling overwhelmed by my to-do list, I feel renewed energy and move forward with strength and enthusiasm. In these moments and more, I discover grace anew. And from the scriptures, from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. John chapter 1, verse 16. In witness to the wisdom of the many paths to the sacred, we read from 3 sacred traditions on this morning's topic, sitting with God. From Buddhism, our mind is filled with noise, and that's why we can't hear the call of life, the call of love. Our heart is calling us, but we don't hear. We don't have the time to listen to our heart. From Thich Nhat Hanh. From Judaism, be still and know that I am God. From Christianity, but whenever you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Matthew chapter 6, verse 6.
In the silence
the silence where every color blends and every rainbow ends, good is there. In the light now you find that you know peace of mind. In the silence, your path is paved in gold, and all your dreams unfold. Love is there. Peace is there. Truth is there. God is there.
Well, good morning. Good to be here this morning. Over the past couple of weeks, Vicki has been speaking on the topic of the way of the heart. Last week, she focused specifically on some of the writings of Reverend Dr. Cynthia Bourgeau, as she explained, an Episcopal priest, prolific author, and a faculty member at the Center for Action and Contemplation, which is Father Richard Rohr's study center in Santa Fe. So I just wanted to make that connection for you. I'm going to also be talking about her today, so I wanted to make that connection with what Vicki was talking about last week, so you know I'm talking about the same person. And Vicki also mentioned in her talks that there's a, let's say, a portion, a part of the Christian faith that has had a movement over the past century, perhaps, to recover some of its ancient mystical practices. And so over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to be focusing specifically on one of these recovered Christian traditions, which is contemplative prayer. I'm going to be using this book, Sitting with God by Rich Lewis. You don't have to buy the book. You certainly, can get the information from my lessons, but if you want to go a little deeper, it's a very readable book. You can get it on Amazon as well as Kindle, and it has a lot of personal stories. So it's a very sweet book that I think you would enjoy. Contemplative prayer and its modern simplified version, which is called centering prayer, they look a lot like meditation, right? Most of you know that I'm a practitioner and promoter of mindfulness meditation, which after probably about 5 years of daily practice has had a profound impact on my own life. I cherish my time spent in meditation, and I really look forward to that break that it gives me from that often constant stream of thoughts in my mind. And I just look so much forward to that time, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes spent in peace and quiet. I really think there is a collective thirst in our culture today for silence. Now we have this 24/7 world of cell phones and internet and social media. We're never disconnected, it seems like. And I think that there's this collective yearning for inner stillness and for a break from all of the noise. This might account for the sort of explosion of popularity of mindfulness, which has really gone mainstream now and is very, very well known by a lot of people in our culture. And mindfulness has been my practice for many years, and it's an awesome practice. And as beneficial as it is, and it is extremely beneficial, it's a largely secular practice. And in my own practice, I had started feeling like I was sometimes left wanting something deeper, yearning somehow to connect to something deeper and something sacred. And so that yearning to connect with something greater than myself in my daily practice something beyond my human self, is what has sort of attracted me recently to this idea of contemplative prayer. It's said that we human beings are hardwired for intimacy with God, with that which is the deepest substance of our being. And so it occurred to me, I don't know why, these are the things that occur to me, if I am yearning for God, could it be also that God is yearning for me? Well, the Sufi mystic Rumi said, that which you seek is seeking you. And in the article on the Beatitudes by Cynthia Bourgeot that Vicky was referencing last week, she actually says, some spiritual teachers say that the yearning you feel for God is actually coming from the opposite direction. It is, in fact, God's yearning for you. Contemplative prayer has many, many benefits. But the deepest purpose of a contemplative practice is to seek to know God and to develop or deepen our relationship with God. Now, I want to say right now that if the word God is uncomfortable for you, at any time in my talk, you are fully welcome to substitute it in your mind for whatever works best for you. Source, divine mind, higher self, ground of being, creator, spirit, whatever works. I want to be clear that the word God I'm using in a very expansive and inclusive way. So contemplative prayer, in essence, is a practice of opening the heart to God or to spirit. And as Vicky mentioned in her talk, it's a primary path to this way of the heart that she's been exploring with us and that I think we're probably going to continue looking at. So contemplative prayer is one of the main ways to practice living a more heart-centered life. It's not new. Contemplative prayer is not new. In fact, it's believed to date back to probably the 4th century and the writings of St. John Cassian, who was a monk and mystic and theologian in the 4th century. As I mentioned, over the past 50 or so years, there's been a movement within Christianity to return to some of our mystical roots and to recover some of those ancient practices and sort of update them for modern times. And so in the 1970s, Father Thomas Keating, he wanted to make this ancient practice of contemplative prayer more simplified and therefore more accessible to more people. So he came up with a very simple formula and he called centering prayer. So I'm going to first quickly explain the process of centering prayer, and then later during our meditation time, I'll explain it in more detail as we go ahead and try it out. Oh, what's that? Hearing strange noises. We're not used to having this door open over here, and we're hearing everything from the street. So Father Thomas Keating, his sort of program for centering prayer has 4 steps. The first one is to choose a sacred word as a symbol of your intention to open to God's presence and action within. So it's a very short word, 1 or 2 syllables. It could be God, Jesus, Spirit, be still, any number of things. It's important to not get hung up too much on the word and just use whatever comes to you. Then it's much like other types of meditation. The second step is to sit comfortably with your eyes closed if you prefer, spend a few moments settling and getting relaxed, and then silently introduce the sacred word into your mind. Then, when you become aware of thoughts, as you very quickly will, you return ever so gently to the sacred word. The idea is that as thoughts or bodily sensations or emotions or these things come up, the idea is to release them and come back to the sacred word. So it's not repeating the word as a mantra. It's just being in the silence until you become aware that you've gone into a thought, and then when you become aware, you come back to your sacred word. And that's it. That's pretty much it. The 4th step is just that at the end of your period of silence, to spend a few moments allowing yourself to gently transition back into the rest of your day. It's very simple. It's recommended that we practice it 15 to 20 minutes twice a day, but Most of you know, and if you've done any of my meditation challenges, you know that my little shtick or whatever is I'm really a proponent of setting small, sustainable goals. So it's better that you do 5 minutes than that you think 15 or 20 minutes is too much and then you don't do it at all. Any amount of time spent doing this is highly beneficial. And the way that I have been able to sustain a practice, because if you know me, for me to sustain something, is by only requiring 5 minutes of myself every day. Now, sometimes I do a lot more. Sometimes it's only 5, but that's what has worked for me. So during this month, as we're exploring this topic, I invite you to search yourself and see if you feel like you would like to make that commitment to yourself, to spend 5 minutes practicing this technique over the following month. And I will be doing it with you. This is a new practice for me as well. So we will be exploring that together. So how is centering prayer different from mindfulness? One of the explanations I read was that it's a difference of attention versus intention. So mindfulness practice is all about attention, right? Mindful awareness, whether it's our breath or whatever it is that we're using, it's about being aware. Centering prayer is an opening to the presence of God with the intention to allow God's action in us. In other words, allowing that Holy Spirit, that energy of love that we call God, to work in us. So the intention is the most important piece of this. Father Keating, in his instructions, used the word consent, our intention to consent to the presence of God. I've been working with this concept a lot over the past month or so of consent. It's really interesting because it's not the context we usually use it in. But it's about bringing an active willingness to experience the divine indwelling. So that's the important piece. It's a willingness to say yes to God, to Spirit, to whatever arises in you during your contemplative time. It's sort of a surrendering to silence and to the stillness within. It's an invitation to Spirit. It's like an allowing. It's practicing being open and receptive. Now, when we sit, the monkey mind starts, right? It just does. It just does. And just as we talk about in other types of meditation, this does not make you bad. This does not make you a failure. This does not mean you're not doing it right. Ixnay, all of that, okay? Everybody has monkey mind. I love to say, I bet when the Dalai Lama sits down, he has monkey mind. He probably does, because why? He's human. And that's what the human mind does. So the goal is not to obliterate our thoughts. It's what we do when we notice that we're thinking. And what we do in the contemplative practice and centering prayer is let go. So it's a practice of letting go. Father Keating apparently said that if you have 10,000 thoughts, which I do, then he said that's 10,000 opportunities to let go and to return to God. So it's a sort of strengthening of our letting go muscle. And the more, like any practice, the more we do it, the better we get at it. So it's a letting go into God, into Spirit. Now, the purpose of this practice is to interrupt those perpetual thoughts that are generated by the mind throughout the day, right? And those thoughts tend to cause us agitation. And agitation tends to turn into a form of suffering, right? So Bourgeot explains that those constant thoughts that we have, it keeps us outer focused, okay? And it keeps us identified with what she calls our small self. And we use this term in Unity sometimes, small s self, meaning our ego or material self, our human self, versus our big S self, which would be our higher self, our spiritual self, our Christ nature. So the thinking is what keeps us identified with our human self. Now, we aren't seeking to obliterate that human self, We aren't making it bad, okay? It's not bad. It's just that life gets out of balance when we are over-identified with it, when we basically forget that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, right? And so centering prayer is a way to help us with that, and we need to keep remembering it over and over. Even, I'm sure I can probably speak for Vicki, we're ministers, and we struggle with it just as much as anyone else. It's that constant catching ourselves and remembering. So the goal is not to stop thinking. And we certainly don't want to resist thinking or get into a sort of power struggle with our thoughts, because that won't be helpful. As I mentioned, when you're doing the practice and you notice that you have been thinking about the future, the past, worrying, making that shopping list in your mind, whatever it is, the idea is to let go. This letting go is really important because what it does is it helps over time, as we practice this day after day, it helps us to relinquish just a little bit that self-will, that ego-based will, and become more receptive to the divine will. It's sort of a process of emptying of self, allowing ourselves to be emptied of our human selves and filled with our spirit selves. It's a practice of non-attachment and non-clinging to this human self. As Vicki mentioned, contemplative practice is sometimes referred to as putting the mind in the heart. So neurologically, when we sit in quiet contemplation, it entrains our mind and heart into a sort of rhythm, as we talked about, a coherence that's sort of bringing them into working together. We tend to spend a lot of our time up here. And so it's sort of bringing that down and dwelling a little bit more in this space, allowing us to live a more heart-centered life. And Bourgeot explains that when we let go of that ego identification, we naturally move into the heart space, which is a space of compassion. The practice of centering prayer is also sometimes called putting on the mind of Christ. So what this means is to become like Jesus, right? Or to become more like our own Christ nature, our best, highest self. As you know, the Gospels make many references to Jesus going away from the multitudes to pray. It occurs to me that perhaps in these instances, he was doing this very act of putting the mind in the heart, especially when he had to do things that were really, really challenging. You notice all of a sudden Jesus flees the scene because he is going to spend some time doing this, centering and putting the mind in the heart, allowing his heart and mind to be aligned. And I believe that this is what enabled him to demonstrate that radical love, compassion, forgiveness, and mercy that he demonstrates in the Gospels. So when we're talking about that balance between the ego self and the spiritual self, Jesus was the great example of that. He really had that balance thing down. He shows us how to walk that line between being fully human and fully divine. That's not an easy line to walk. That pretty much is the deal, right? That is our challenge in this human existence. So as we know in the Gospels, we see Jesus eating, drinking, getting tired, taking a nap. Love that part. Cursing the fig tree, getting angry at the money changers. He's exhibiting humanness. But we also see him doing these amazingly high-level things, forgiving the unforgivable, spending time with the outcasts of society, the marginalized, the ostracized, and showing them incredible mercy and compassion, which are obviously coming from his higher self. So what he's telling us is to get ourselves into balance between our human selves and our divine selves. I like to think of it as less of me, more of thee. But again, this is not getting rid of my human self, it's bringing that balance. So Jesus gives us this roadmap of how to live a more centered life. Vicki talked about the Beatitudes last week. Release the ego, be open, be humble, be meek, be poor of spirit, and adopt this way of living that Jesus demonstrated that's based on non-resistance and non-violence. essentially the way of the heart. So practicing centering prayer is a process of letting go of thoughts and spending time in the silence. Now, the author of the book that I'm using, Lewis, he says, it's vital to incorporate silence into our daily lives because that's where the magic happens. That's it. That's the place to be, man, in the silence. He explains that the silence you will find when you start doing this, the silence is not empty, but rather is filled with God. That's why he calls it in the title of his book, Sitting with God. So centering prayer is spending time in the quiet, sitting with God. So what can we hope to experience in the silence? Or what happens in the silence when we enter the silence? Well, first of all, the silence is where we communicate with God. It's where we receive that direct revelation or that spiritual understanding of truth. This is what our co-founder Charles Fillmore did. He said to himself, if I'm spirit, and this God they talk so much about is spirit, then we ought to be able to somehow communicate, or the whole thing is a fraud. Right? And then he did just that. He sat in the silence every night for an hour to get in touch with God. And so silence is where we begin to hear and learn to hear that still small voice. Father Keating said, silence is God's first language and everything else is a poor translation. So when we spend time in the silence, we are beginning to learn the language of God. Second, the silence is where we come to know God. Not intellectually, which we love to do, right? We love to sort of, I know I do, try to figure it out. But not intellectually, but experientially. It's a mystical practice by nature because it involves that direct experience of God. Now, even though our goal may be to know God, there is a sense in which God is sort of unknowable, unable to be sort of pinned down, let's say. God is mystery, right? It's a mystery, and that's something that we need to come to terms with, that we're never going to be able to fully understand it, and maybe nor should we. So contemplative prayer, or the centering prayer practice, is opening the door to that mystery, allowing us to go inside and dwell in the mystery. And Lewis tells us that we best understand God when we're trying not to understand God. So centering prayer is an invitation to God to make itself known to us. He says that it can help us if we can try to let go of our preconceived notions of what God is and just let God be God, whatever that ends up being for us, because I fully believe that God shows up a little bit differently for each one of us. So we can't define God, he says, we can only open to God. And we are all, it's so individual, and we are all at a different place in this process. So he says with centering prayer, we each just start where we are and we enter into the mystery. And in the mystery of that silence, we can discover for ourselves the vastness of God's love. Third, the silence is where we forge a relationship with God. I know when people used to talk about this, I used to think, what are you talking about? How do you have a relationship with something I can't even see? But now I understand that. And Father Keating says, God just is. And the way to connect with that isness is to just be too. So God isn't running around doing stuff like we are. God just is. So if we want to sort of show up where God is, we have to get into that isness too, that beingness. And so centering prayer is a practice of just being and also just letting be. And this beingness is where we encounter God. Lewis says, God is this vast potentiality, this field of all possibilities, of just infinite stuff, spiritual substance, right? Our job is to enter into that space and see what happens. Just see what happens. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. But I believe that we will find that wonderful, beautiful, powerful, and healing things will happen in that space. When we open to that, when we do that consenting to the action of God, yes, I want that action of God in me, I think we will find that God rushes in to fill whatever need it is that we have. Divine Mind, our source, knows exactly what we need. Or if you prefer, our higher self knows exactly what we need. And in the silence is where we go and get it, go and find it. It's where we open ourselves to be provided with that which we most need. It might be the sudden knowledge that we need for something or sudden understanding in order to move forward with some aspect of our life. It might be the energy or motivation to complete a necessary task. It might be discernment regarding a decision we need to make. It might be guidance to make a change in our lives, or inspiration to serve others in a certain way. Whatever it is that we need will be provided for us in the silence, and we can trust that. The silence is a space where we can allow ourselves to be loved by God, to experience that love. And it's a space, God can take all of it, right? So it's a space where we can dump that anger, jealousy, resentment, fear, whatever it is we're struggling with, can be released into that space where God can transform it into love. Finally, the silence is where we seek. So first we're seeking a relationship with God. Then we are ultimately seeking union with God. They call it practicing the presence, right? Unity has used that language for a long time. Practicing the presence. Okay, but isn't God already present everywhere? Well, Father Richard Rohr is well known for having said, we cannot attain the presence of God because we're already in the presence of God. What's absent, however, is our awareness of it. So in Unity, they use this word quicken a lot. I know it's a very old word. So I feel like we can quicken the presence of God. In other words, make it sort of come into focus for us. Make it come alive. So obviously in Unity, we say that there's only one power and one presence, and God is everywhere present. So it's not like we need to get God to come and be present with us, right? What we need to do is remove those obstacles that are keeping us from experiencing that presence. That's why we call it practicing, because it takes practice for us to be consciously aware. And so our goal is to come into conscious presence and conscious union with God. But again, aren't we already in union with God all the time? I mean, we talk about that in Unity, right? That we're one. And we proclaim our oneness with God and with all things. But I don't know about you all. I don't experience that all the time. In fact, I don't experience it most of the time. I'm going to tell you right now. I don't go around experiencing oneness all the time. I go around experiencing Michelle-ness most of the time. So we are spiritual beings having a human experience, but that human experience is incredibly compelling. Most of the time, we get so caught up in our daily life and that dailiness of being human that we completely forget our spiritual nature. So while we are obviously already in static or unaware union with God, our goal is to come into dynamic, conscious, aware union with God. It's an invitation, an opening. It's like saying, yes, I want to feel God's presence. Yes, I want Spirit to work in me. I want to experience that union with God. And so as we practice letting go of thoughts and releasing just a little bit that ego grip on our attachment to our human self, we begin to grasp the idea that this separation we have bought into may not be the whole truth. May not, in fact, be true at all. And the idea is that as we begin to let go just a little bit of that small s self, we begin to merge with the larger self or with the divine mind. In the silence, we come to know ourselves in relationship to God. So in this spiritually paradoxical way that seems to be the nature of many deep truths, we find that as we come to know God more deeply, we come to know ourselves more deeply. The silence is teaching us who and what we are. As the subtitle of the book that I'm using suggests, contemplative prayer is a journey to the God within. It's a journey to our most inner self, our truest self. Bourgeot explains it really well. She says, as we move toward the center, so it's a centering practice, our own being and the divine being become more and more mysteriously interwoven. Mysteriously interwoven. So centering prayer is a journey into this mysterious interwovenness, to know our deepest, truest selves, which are of God, to know our divinity, the God within, our Christ nature. And so as we practice letting go of the ego's attachment to thought forms, we experience a type of returning to God, which is ultimately a returning to our truest self. And so it's really a type of homecoming. And I love that idea. It's a coming home to ourselves. So it's not an outer focused practice at all, even though it could sound like that when we say being in the presence of God. It's a journey to come home to ourselves. And one of Father Rohr's associates, James Finley, I think said it best. He described it like this: when engaged in contemplation, we rest in God, resting in us. We are at home in God, at home in us. And so it is.
God before me, God behind me, to the left and the right. God above me, God below me, all around and inside. God before me, God behind me, to the left and the right. God above me, God below me, all around and inside. All around and inside. All around and inside.
So as always, I invite you now to get comfortable wherever you are seated. Begin to bring your awareness into your body and begin to take some slow, deep breaths, breathing in deeply and exhaling slowly. If it's comfortable, close your eyes. Let yourself sink into the seat, feeling that surface beneath you rising up to support you as you continue breathing in deeply and exhaling slowly. Just naturally allowing all the distractions to fade away as we bring that focus internally to our center. Intention is the most important thing in centering prayer. So please let these following statements lead you into your intention for the next few minutes of practice. I open myself to the presence of God. I allow Spirit to become active in me. I consent to the activity of God in me. I release, let go, and experience the loving presence of God. Continue slow, deep breathing, feeling your body relax more fully into this space. And now I invite you to introduce to yourself the sacred word that you'll be using just for the next few minutes. It can be anything that comes to you. Let Spirit reveal the word to you. And don't get caught up in the idea of what it is or what it means. It could be spirit. It could be love. Open. Let go, whatever comes to you. And just internally repeat that word to yourself slowly for a few moments. And now just allow yourself to rest. Resting the mind. Resting the body, consciously opening to the presence of God, without expectation, without a preconceived notion of what it should feel like or what might happen, allowing yourself to step into that mystery. You will soon notice that your mind has gone into thoughts. That's okay. The heart beats, the lungs breathe, and the mind thinks. It's just what it does. So when you notice thoughts, bless them and release them, and come back to your sacred word. As you continue to breathe in and breathe out. Each time you notice a thought or a feeling or some compelling sensation, practice flexing that letting go muscle. Just release it. You don't have to get on board that train. You don't have to follow it. You can just bless it and let it go. And come back to your sacred word. So I'm going to invite you now to continue to practice this. Letting go of the thoughts that come into your mind and coming back to your sacred word for just a few moments in the silence. As we begin to prepare to bring this short time in the silence to a close, give yourself an acknowledgement for this practice you've just done. However it worked out for you was perfect. When we spend time in the silence, we generate goodness and love, what the Buddhists sometimes call merit. And so after we've practiced, we can offer that accumulated or generated goodness to all beings. So just now send that good energy, that loving energy that you have generated from the heart space out into the world. May it bless all beings. May all beings be well, be happy, and be at peace.
God before me, God behind me, to the left and the right. God above me, God below me, all around and inside. God before me, God behind me, to the left and the right. God above me, God below me, all around and inside. All around and inside. All around and inside.
And so we close this time of prayer with gratitude for this time spent together, for that loving presence of God, and for this community that reminds us over and over of the truth of who we are. And so we say thank you, thank you. Thank you. Amen.
Unity of Monterey Bay is the collective consciousness and commitment of all of us who give of our time, treasure, and talent in order to sustain the spiritual community that is dedicated to transforming lives. We know that prosperity is a state of mind that finds blessings in every situation and abundance in joyous generosity. We transform all appearance of fear or lack into faith-filled peace of mind by shifting our attention to thoughts of gratitude for the abundance of God's good in our lives. And with our hearts and minds overflowing with gratitude, we breathe into the divine flow of God's good, trusting that we are enough, and that we have enough, and that there always is enough to both have and to share. And again, we are grateful to all of you for your online giving through our website at unityofmontereybay.org and through your mailed-in offerings, including those who have set up automatic giving with your banking institutions. We are truly blessed. And now, from this place of faith and gratitude, I invite you to join me in mindful intention and joining in our offertory blessing. I am an open channel for God's infinite good. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies everything I give and everything I receive. I am both blessed and a blessing. Thank you, God.
I will leave this world as it is, go inside to find my God. I will leave this world as it is, go inside to find my God.
Thank you, Daniel Amad, for that awesome song, as well as Bill Provost and Richard Burdick for their music today, and our awesome music team, as always, Denise and John and Robin. So as we bring our service to a close this morning, we are so grateful that you have joined us, and we hope we've made you feel at home in our Unity of Monterey Bay community. And we want you to know that wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. There are many ways to receive prayer in our community. Our unityofmontereybay.org website has a prayer request link. And our chaplains hold those prayers in consciousness, as well as send them on to Silent Unity. You can always email Reverend Vicky or myself. And of course, Silent Unity is always available by phone, email, app, or Alexa. We will be having our coffee hour after the service today, beginning at 11:30 on Zoom, and the link for that is in your newsletter. So, with all of that, as we prepare for our closing circle and our prayer for protection, holding all those in our community this morning that are in need of prayer in our hearts, holding our beloved earth and all its inhabitants. And come back. Come down and see us. We're here. We want you to join us. We miss you. There is space for you in this circle. So please join me in our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God, and the presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And I invite you to try out spending just 5 minutes a day in the silence this coming week.